My sister called at 7:43 on a Tuesday morning, which should have been my first warning. My sister never called before noon unless she wanted something. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 7:51. Then my brother-in-law called from his number. Then my sister again. I set my phone face down on my desk, opened my laptop, and started my morning coffee. Whatever it was could wait until I'd had at least one cup and checked my emails. I worked from home as a senior data analyst for a logistics firm, and I had a 9 o'clock stand-up I actually needed to prepare for. My sister's emergencies had a way of turning out to be things like her nail technician canceling or her Peloton making a strange noise. At Act 15, my doorbell rang. I looked at the camera feed on my laptop, a habit I'd developed after a package theft situation 2 years ago, and there they were. My sister, wearing a blazer like she was going to a closing, standing next to my brother-in-law in a button-down shirt, and beside them, a man I didn't recognize in a charcoal suit carrying a leather folio. He had the particular posture of someone who billed by the hour. I closed my laptop, walked downstairs, and opened the door. Finally, my sister said, pushing past me the way she'd been doing since we were children. "We've been trying to reach you for 30 minutes, I said. My brother-in-law followed her in without being invited. The man in the suit paused at the threshold and extended his hand. "Miss Caldwell? I'm Richard Holt, estate attorney. I've been retained by your sister and her husband to discuss the matter of your grandmother's condominium." I shook his hand. "Come in, Mr. Holt." I already knew exactly what this was. I'd known for about 3 weeks that it was coming. I just hadn't known it would be a Tuesday morning. My grandmother, Grandma Rose, had passed 8 months earlier, at the age of 89, sharp until the very end, stubborn about her independence, and the only member of my family who had ever looked at me without visible disappointment. She'd lived in her condo for 22 years, a 2-bedroom unit in a well-kept building in Scottsdale, Arizona, about 12 minutes from where I lived. I had taken her to her cardiology appointments. I had organized her medications. I had eaten dinner with her every Sunday for 6 years, through 2 of her hospitalizations, through my own divorce, through everything. My sister, who lived 45 minutes away, had visited approximately 4 times in those 6 years, always around the holidays, always when our mother was also there, always with a gift that was slightly too expensive to seem thoughtless and slightly too generic to seem considered. My grandmother had left me the condo, not my sister, not my brother-in-law, me. It was in her will, filed properly, executed without drama. The transfer of title had been completed 6 months ago. I had the deed. I had the paperwork. I had everything. What I also had, though my sister didn't know this yet, was a great deal more than just that condo. "Sit down," I said, gesturing toward the living room. I did not offer coffee. My sister sat on my couch and looked around the room with the particular expression she reserved for things she considered beneath her. My brother-in-law stood with his arms crossed near the window. Mr. Holt sat across from my sister and opened his folio on the coffee table. "I'll get right to it," Mr. Holt said. "My clients believe that the disposition of your grandmother's estate warrants a second look. Specifically, the transfer of the Ocotillo Drive property to you alone, to the exclusion of other family members. My grandmother had one surviving child," I said, "my mother. And my mother was included in the estate. She received the investment accounts. She received what was left of them," my sister said. After years of being slowly drained, I looked at her. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm saying that Grandma was elderly, and that you had significant influence over her finances and her daily life, and that a woman of her age, in her condition, may not have been fully." "Choose your next word carefully," I said. My sister's jaw tightened. Mr. Holt cleared his throat. "The legal term would be undue influence. My clients are not necessarily alleging anything criminal. They simply want to ensure that the estate was distributed fairly, and that the primary asset, the condominium, currently valued at approximately $480,000, is taken into account in a more equitable way." "Equitable," I repeated. "You're single," my sister said. "You live alone. You work from home. You don't need a second property sitting empty. We have 2 kids, we have a mortgage, and frankly, that condo should stay in the family in a meaningful way." I looked at her for a long moment. She had a new highlights job, I noticed. Her nails were done. She was wearing a watch I recognized from a brand my brother-in-law had mentioned wanting for his birthday last year, the one that ran about $4,000. Things seemed fine for them. Better than fine. Mr. Holt, I said, did my sister and brother-in-law share with you their theory about why my grandmother left the condo to me? They expressed concerns about the conditions under which the will was. Did they tell you that my grandmother and I had dinner together every Sunday for 6 years? That I drove her to every cardiology appointment after her second stent placement in 2020? That I was the one who found her on the kitchen floor after her fall in 2021 and stayed with her in the hospital for 4 days? That I helped her update her will in 2022 with her own attorney, not mine, after she explicitly told me she wanted to make sure her wishes were documented while she still had full capacity. Mr. Holt's pen stopped moving. Her own attorney, I continued, was a woman named Patricia Mwangi, with an office in Paradise Valley. She is still practicing. The will was witnessed by 2 of my grandmother's neighbors, both of whom are alive and coherent. My grandmother had a cognitive assessment done 6 weeks before signing. The results are part of the estate file. She scored in the normal range for her age across every category. Mr. Holt slowly closed his folio. I want to be very clear about something, I said. The condo on Ocotillo Drive belongs to me. The deed is in my name. It was transferred legally, with full documentation, through proper probate proceedings. If your clients want to contest that, they are welcome to file in Maricopa County Probate Court, where they will spend money on legal fees and lose. I paused. Or they can leave my house. This is ridiculous, my brother-in-law said, finally speaking. He had a voice that always sounded like he was slightly out of breath, like everything was slightly more effort than he'd expected. You're being selfish. Your grandmother would have wanted the family taken care of. My grandmother wanted me taken care of. That's why she wrote it in her will. You were her favorite, my sister said. And the way she said it made it sound like an accusation, like affection was something I had stolen. You always made sure of that. Always over there. Always doing things for her. Always making the rest of us look bad. Showing up, I said, is not a strategy. It's just showing up. She stood up. We'll be in touch. Through Mr. Holt, I said, not through my personal phone. She walked out. My brother-in-law followed. Mr. Holt paused at the door and looked back at me with the expression of a man who had just realized he'd been given incomplete information by his clients. Miss Caldwell, he said quietly, I apologize for the intrusion. You were doing your job, I said. They weren't honest with you. He nodded once and left. I went back upstairs, sat at my desk, and stared at my screen for a while. My coffee had gone cold. My 9 o'clock stand-up was in 12 minutes. I pulled up the meeting link and joined, answered my questions, made my notes, and when the call ended, I sat very still for about 5 minutes. Then I called my attorney. Her name was Serena, and she'd helped me with the estate transfer after my grandmother passed. I'd known her since law school orientation week, when we'd both shown up to the wrong building and stood in the parking lot laughing about it. She hadn't gone into practicing law. I hadn't gone into law school. But she'd become an estate attorney, and I'd become someone who needed one, and it had worked out. They showed up with a lawyer, I said when she answered. Of course they did, Serena said. What did he look like? Charcoal suit. Leather folio. Name was Richard Holt. I know, Richard. He's fine. He was probably working on incomplete information. That's what I thought. Did they say anything they shouldn't have? My sister made a comment about undue influence. In front of their own attorney. Serena laughed. Beautiful. Okay, send me the full account of what happened while it's fresh. I'll draft a letter to Holt's office outlining the documentation we have. That should end it. I don't think this is ending, I said. I think this is just starting. There was a pause. What makes you say that? My brother-in-law's face, I said. He wasn't angry. He was desperate. After I hung up, I did what I always do when something doesn't add up. I started pulling data. My brother-in-law owned a residential painting contracting business. He'd been running it for 11 years. My sister worked part-time as a real estate agent, though from what I could tell, she hadn't closed a deal in about 8 months. Their house was a 4-bedroom in a suburb about 45 minutes northeast of the city, bought in 2018 for $620,000. It took me about 90 minutes of public records searching to find what I was looking for. The house had 2 liens on it, one from a materials supplier, one from the county for unpaid property taxes. They were 7 months behind. There was also a judgment from a subcontractor who'd sued my brother-in-law's company last year for $38,000 in unpaid labor. The judgment had been entered. It had not been satisfied. I dug further. His business's contractor license had a flag on it, a complaint filed 6 months ago by a homeowner in Tempe, currently under review by the state licensing board. His business registration showed no active employees listed in the most recent quarterly filing. I sat back in my chair. They were in serious trouble. Not the kind of trouble where things were tight. The kind of trouble where you come to your estranged sister's house on a Tuesday morning with a lawyer and try to claim a condo your grandmother left her fair and square. I thought about calling Serena back. Instead, I just kept reading. The eviction notice wasn't public yet, but the lien filings told the story well enough. They had burned through whatever reserves they'd had. My sister's real estate license was current, but her production numbers on the public MLS records were almost non-existent. 2 rentals, listed in the past year, no sales. And then I found something else. The condo building on Ocotillo Drive, the one where my grandmother's unit sat, had 2 other units currently listed for sale. I'd been keeping an eye on the building since I inherited the unit, partly out of habit, partly because I'd been thinking about what to do with it. One unit was a 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor. The other was a corner, 2-bedroom, on the 4th floor with a mountain view. I had a property LLC I'd created 3 years ago, quietly, while I was restructuring my finances after my divorce. I had 2 other properties in it already, a small rental house I'd bought with my settlement money and a condo I'd picked up at auction 18 months ago that was currently generating a modest but steady income. My sister didn't know about either of them. My brother-in-law certainly didn't. They thought I was a woman who worked alone from her house and had gotten lucky with an inheritance. The corner unit on the 4th floor was listed at $465,000. The building management had been trying to fill it for 3 months. I made some calls. A week later, my LLC submitted a cash offer. 2 weeks after that, I owned it. The letter from Serena's office had gone out to Mr. Holt's firm the day after the visit. He had responded promptly, professionally, and with what I read as mild embarrassment. He indicated that his clients had decided not to pursue the matter at this time. I forwarded his email to Serena and thanked her. She told me to let her know if anything else developed. Something else developed. My mother called me on a Thursday evening. She had a particular phone voice she used when she was relaying a message from someone who'd asked her to call on their behalf, slightly too cheerful, slightly too careful. I'd been hearing that voice my whole life. "Your sister feels terrible about how things went," she said. "Does she?" I said. "She was upset. About Grandma. She didn't handle it well. She came to my house with a lawyer, Mom. She was grieving. We're all grieving." My mother was quiet for a moment. "She and your brother-in-law are going through a hard time, financially." I think she panicked. "I understand that," I said. "What I don't understand is why that gave her the right to try to take what Grandma left me." "She just thought that I wouldn't fight back," I said. "That I'd roll over the way I always have. That's what she thought." My mother didn't answer. "Did she tell you she accused me of manipulating Grandma?" I asked. "In front of her attorney?" "She didn't mean it like." "She meant it exactly like that. Because it's easier to say, I manipulated an 89-year-old woman, than to admit she didn't bother to show up." The line was quiet. My mother had always done this, floated in the middle, available to carry messages both directions, never actually landing anywhere. I used to think it was a personality flaw. Now, I understood it was a choice she made every single time. "I have to go," I told her. "I have an early morning." 3 weeks after that, my sister called me directly. I picked up because I was curious. "I owe you an apology," she said. She had rehearsed this. I could hear the rehearsal in the pauses. What I did was wrong. The lawyer, showing up like that, it was wrong. We were scared, and I took it out on you. "Okay," I said. "We're really struggling right now," she said. "The business has slowed down, and some things have been some setbacks. I just thought maybe if we could talk about the condo, maybe some kind of arrangement. Like you rent it to us at a reduced rate until we get back on our feet." There it was. "So the apology," I said, "is a setup for a request." "Silence. Let me ask you something," I said. "When Grandma was in the hospital after her fall, where were you?" "Is. When she was doing her cardiac rehab in 2022 and needed someone to drive her 3 times a week. Where were you?" "I had the kids." I know you had the kids. I'm not saying you should have done what I did. I'm saying you didn't. And my grandmother knew that. She saw who showed up. She made her decision accordingly. That's not manipulation. That's her telling the truth about her own life. My sister was quiet. I'm not going to rent you the condo, I said. I'm not going to give you money. I'm not going to pretend the last 2 months didn't happen. So that's it. Her voice had shifted, the rehearsed version gone, the real version underneath it, which was mostly just anger with the tears sitting just behind it. You're just going to let us lose the house. I'm not letting you do anything. You made your choices. You're so cold, she said. You've always been cold. Grandma only liked you because you were always around. You made her feel like she needed you. Or, I said, she needed someone around, and I was there, and you weren't. She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a while after that. I thought about my grandmother's kitchen, the one with the yellow curtains she'd had since 1987, the way she made coffee too strong and always put out a plate of cookies. I was too old to want but always ate anyway. I thought about the Sunday she'd taken my hand across the table and said, very simply, without any particular drama, that she wanted me to have the condo because she knew I'd take care of it, and that she knew I understood what it meant to take care of something. I understood what she meant. My sister had never wanted to take care of the condo. She'd wanted to sell it. She'd wanted what it was worth. I spent the next several weeks watching the public records the way I'd watched them before. The lien on the house didn't go away. The county tax delinquency moved into the next notice stage. My brother-in-law's licensing complaint was still active. My sister had listed exactly one property in the past 3 months, and it hadn't sold. The pre-foreclosure notice appeared in the county records on a Wednesday. I was having lunch at my desk. I looked at it for a long time. Their house, the 4-bedroom with the 3-car garage and the pool and the outdoor kitchen my brother-in-law had been so proud of when they moved in, was worth somewhere between $740,000 and $780,000 in the current market. They owed just over $590,000 on the mortgage. With the outstanding liens and the tax delinquency, the equity they had was real but rapidly being consumed. If they went to foreclosure, they'd lose most of it. If they sold quickly, they might salvage something. But they were already behind on the timeline. I called Serena. Tell me about buying through an LLC at a pre-foreclosure situation, I said. She paused. How personal is this? Very. How much do you know about the property? A lot. She walked me through it. A direct approach to the bank or to the homeowners before formal foreclosure. A cash offer, as is, quick close. The bank wanted the property off their books before it became a full REO situation. It was cleaner for everyone, theoretically. I thought about it for a long time, longer than I'd thought about the corner unit on the 4th floor. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with a 4-bedroom house with a pool. I had no use for it personally, but I'd been thinking for a while about something my grandmother had said to me once, during one of her hospital stays, a slightly rambling conversation late at night when she was tired and nostalgic and more honest than usual. She'd talked about the early years of her marriage, when she and my grandfather had rented a room from a woman who took in boarders because she'd lost her husband and needed income and had 2 extra rooms and a certain kind of courage. My grandmother had said she'd never forgotten that woman. That being given a safe place to land when you needed it most was a thing you never stopped being grateful for. I'd been quietly researching nonprofits in the area that worked with transitional housing. There was an organization about 8 miles from where my sister and brother-in-law lived that worked with families coming out of crisis, job loss, domestic situations, medical debt. They had a waiting list. They were chronically underfunded on the housing side. Their director had given a local news interview 3 months ago where she'd said they needed more physical space more than they needed almost anything else. I made some calls. My LLC submitted an offer on my sister's house 6 weeks before the bank would have moved to a formal foreclosure sale. I offered $610,000, enough to cover the mortgage and the outstanding liens and the tax delinquency, with almost nothing left over. The bank moved fast. They always move fast when someone offers cash. My sister and brother-in-law were served notice on a Thursday afternoon. The new owner, my LLC, was giving them 30 days to vacate. My brother-in-law called me that same evening. I picked up. You did this, he said. It wasn't really a question. I bought a property from a bank, I said. It's public record. You bought our house. To do what? To punish us. To rub it in. I bought it because I had a use for it, I said. What happens to it next is my decision, not yours. Do you know what you're doing to us? We have kids. We have 2 kids. I know, I said. I hope you'll make good choices for them. Where are we supposed to go? I'd start looking now, I said. 30 days goes fast. He hung up. My sister didn't call. My mother called, twice. I let both go to voicemail. The first message was crying. The second was angry. I listened to both of them, deleted them, and made myself dinner. The moving truck was at my sister's house on the 28th day. I know because I drove past on my way to meet the director of the transitional housing nonprofit, who I'd asked to meet me at the property at 2 in the afternoon. I didn't slow down. I just looked. My brother-in-law was carrying boxes. My sister was on the phone. The kids, my nephew and niece, who were 9 and 12, who I'd sent birthday cards to for years, even when my sister didn't reciprocate, were sitting on the front porch, looking at their phones. I drove past and kept going. The director's name was Vanessa, and she was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd spent 15 years fighting for resources on behalf of families who had none. She shook my hand at the front door with both of hers and looked at the house like it was something she'd stopped letting herself hope for. Walk me through what you're thinking, she said. 3 to 4 family units, I said. 2-year maximum, stay, case management, built-in, employment support. The garage could be storage or converted to a shared workspace. The pool needs to be assessed for liability, but it could be a real asset, something the kids have access to. She was already taking notes. What's the arrangement? Nominal lease, I said. $1 a year. 5-year, renewable. You handle operations, staffing, case management. I'll cover the property taxes and exterior maintenance through the LLC. She stopped writing and looked at me. Why? Because someone gave my grandmother a safe place to land when she needed it, I said. She never forgot that. I don't want to forget it either. Vanessa nodded slowly. Can I ask what this property has to do with you personally? I looked at the outdoor kitchen my brother-in-law had been so proud of. The rose bushes my sister had planted along the back fence because she'd seen them on a home design account she followed. The pool that my nephew had learned to swim in. It used to belong to people who tried to take something from me, I said. Now it's going to help people who don't have anything. That seems right. The transitional housing program opened 6 weeks after that. Vanessa sent me a photo on opening day. 3 families, 6 children total, standing in the backyard in October sunshine. One of the kids, a girl of maybe 7, was sitting on the edge of the pool with her feet in the water. The rose bushes were still blooming. I printed the photo and kept it on my desk. My sister sent me a text message 2 months later. They'd found an apartment, a 2-bedroom in a complex near the interstate. Nothing like the house they'd had. She said they were doing okay. She said she'd been thinking a lot. She said she was sorry. And this time, it didn't have the careful pauses of something rehearsed. I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back, I hope things get better for you. I mean that. I didn't offer money. I didn't offer the condo. I didn't pretend nothing had happened. But I also didn't need to twist the knife. I'd learned that from my grandmother. Too, that you could hold your ground without making your whole life about the people who'd tried to take it from you. She didn't write back. Maybe she will someday. Maybe she won't. My grandmother's condo is rented now to a woman named Deborah who works remotely in cybersecurity and has a small dog named Pretzel and has told me twice that she loves the yellow light in the afternoons. I kept the furniture mostly intact. I kept the yellow curtains. I kept one thing from my sister's house, not to be cruel, just because it was the only thing in the house that had ever meant anything to me. In my nephew's room, there was a drawing he'd made when he was 5 or 6, a crayon portrait of what he'd labeled, my family, in wobbly letters. I was in it. Aunt Claire, it said under a stick figure with yellow hair. I was the only aunt in the drawing. I asked Vanessa to pack it carefully when the house was cleared, and she did. It lives on my bookshelf now. The corner unit on the 4th floor of my grandmother's building is still in my portfolio. I'm in no hurry to do anything with it. Sometimes I go over on Sunday mornings, sit on the balcony with coffee, and look at the mountains. My grandmother used to do the same thing from her unit 1 floor below. Same view, slightly different angle. She told me once that a home isn't the walls and the roof. It's what you choose to do with the time you spend inside it. She said she'd watched people live in beautiful houses and die unhappy, and she'd watched people thrive in modest apartments and be the richest kind of rich there is. My sister spent 11 years building a beautiful house and filling it with things that needed to be maintained. She forgot to take care of the things underneath. I spent those same 11 years taking care of my grandmother, doing my work, building quietly, and showing up every Sunday. She called me cold. My grandmother called me the one who understood what a home really meant. I think about which of them knew me better. I already know the answer.